So, in a recent interview, former Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi had some interesting comments to say about President Joe Biden. She called him an impactful president and said that he should be on Mount Rushmore. So, as we can see now that Pelosi is no longer the Speaker of the House, her new job is to be a professional gaslighter on behalf of the Democrat Party. Joe Biden, for the most part, has not been an impactful president, and any impact he has had has been to the detriment of the country. So why is Pelosi saying these things about Biden? Well, she's saying them because Biden towed the line of the Democrat Party. He fell in line when he was pressured by the likes of Pelosi, Obama, Schumer, and others to drop out of the presidential race. They were not saying these things about Joe Biden while he was still running. But since he has shown himself to be a puppet, they are now singing his praises, giving him a treat of sorts. So, what has Joe Biden's impact on the country been since he's been president? We've had 40-year highs in inflation. We've had wars in Europe and the Middle East and Africa. We have had an open border, which has allowed 10 million illegal crossings in the last 4 years. You've had slowing growth, a slowing job market, high interest rates. We've had Joe Biden attempting to buy votes by canceling people's student loan debt. And I say canceling because what that really means is shifting the burden of student loan debt from people who actually took it out to people who never went to college. Additionally, Biden has made America look like a joke on the world stage. First with his disgraceful withdrawal from Afghanistan, which left hundreds of American citizens behind, thousands of American allies, and left 13 American servicemen dead. Joe Biden, I'll admit, has been an impactful president, but it has not been for the good of this country. Then, on top of all that, recently, President Trump held a rally in which he harshly criticized Governor Brian Kemp of Georgia. Trump and Kemp have had disagreements ever since the 2020 election, and at this point they have boiled over in a significant way. I think it is tremendously unhelpful for President Trump to be making these kinds of comments. Ronald Reagan had a rule back in the 80s. He called it the 11th Commandment, and that was not to criticize other Republicans. There's no reason to do so at this point. Brian Kemp is the governor of Georgia, and he will be for at least until 2026. I'm not sure if Georgia has a term limit for their governors, but he's not going anywhere in the near future. And also, Donald Trump should, at least to some extent, be a fan of Brian Kemp because he passed an election integrity law, which made it harder to cheat in elections in Georgia. So that should actually assuage some of President Trump's fears regarding the upcoming election in Georgia. Also, as President Trump criticizes Brian Kemp, every second that he does that is a second that he's not criticizing Kamala Harris and now her VP pick. All of the focus needs to be on them. Republicans should not be taking their time and resources away from battling Kamala and instead battling other Republicans. This is an incredibly important election, and we need all hands on deck to fight Kamala Harris. And Brian Kemp, as a matter of fact, has been doing that. He has not tried to hit back at Trump. He has effectively ignored Trump's attacks, and he is refocused back on Kamala Harris. And let's not forget, when it comes to Brian Kemp, that he won the 2022 Georgia governor's race over Stacey Abrams in the same election where Herschel Walker lost, I believe, to Raphael Warnock. So, Kemp won in a purple state when Republicans were struggling in that election. So Kemp needs to be an ally of the Trump administration and not turned into an enemy. In some less depressing news, the video game Until Dawn is getting a movie adaptation. It is currently in production. Until Dawn is a game that I've played. It's a really fun horror slasher kind of monster game. Really entertaining. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I think this is really interesting. It seems like video game adaptations are really having a moment right now after TV shows like Fallout and The Last of Us. It seems like video game adaptations may end up kind of being the new thing, which sort of follows because superhero movies were the big thing of the 2000s and the 2010s. And, superhero comics were a huge form of entertainment in the decades previous. And now we're starting to get video game adaptations becoming a really big thing. And video games only became a big thing in the last, 30 to 40 years. So this is really cool to see. I'm hopeful that it will be a good movie. Of course, adaptations tend to be pretty hit or miss, but it seems like there have been a lot of good video game adaptations coming out recently. So I'm hopeful for that. And it seems like video game movie adaptations and TV adaptations are going to be the future of the film industry. Okay, guys, today was the day. Kamala Harris has officially picked her VP candidate. It's going to be Governor Walz from Minnesota. And I want to give you my thoughts on that. First off, I think Kamala is a fool not to have picked either Josh Shapiro from Pennsylvania or Mark Kelly from Arizona. Josh Shapiro was widely talked about as one of her possible VP picks. He is a very popular governor out of Pennsylvania. He was just elected back in 2022 to that position. The problem with Mr. Shapiro is that he is in fact a Jew, and the Democrat Party is rife with anti-Semitism at the moment. The likes of Ilhan Omar and all of the Palestine protesters. Actually, as a result of this, Governor Shapiro had been switching up his position on the Israel-Palestine situation. He had said in the past that there would not be a Palestinian state because the Palestinian population was too radical. But he's completely flipped on that. Now he thinks there needs to be a two-state solution, and basically mimicking the typical Democrat Party talking points. On the other side, you had Mark Kelly. He's, again, a very popular senator out of Arizona. He won his race in, I believe, 2020. Both of those candidates were from purple states, but instead she picked Governor Walz. I keep forgetting his first name, but whatever, we'll call him Walz for now. And here's who that is. So he's the governor of Minnesota. He won a second term in 2022, and he is a total radical along the lines of Kamala Harris. This is the guy who said that, quote, one person's socialism is another person's neighborliness. I don't really consider it too neighborly when someone tries to come into my house and steal my things, but to each his own. This man is also radical on gender theory. He assigned a variety of legislation in Minnesota For example, enshrining protections of so-called gender-affirming care in Minnesota, which gender-affirming care actually is sex-denying care, treatments to make someone appear more either masculine if they're female or more feminine if they're male. Protections for this for minors. So this is an incredibly unpopular policy that is being banned in states all over the country. But Governor Walz is a big fan of it, so he's going to keep supporting it. At the end of the day, this is a choice by the Kamala Harris campaign to move away from the center, which is good because they're really showing their true colors. The Kamala Harris campaign is a radical campaign, and Governor Walz exemplifies that very well. Okay, last story for today, and this could end up being the most serious story of the day. Yesterday, several U.S. personnel, it's reported, were injured in an apparent rocket attack at a United States military base in Iraq. It appears that no one has been killed in this attack, but several people were injured. Biden has responded, said that we'll respond in a time and manner of our choosing. But really, I don't expect to see much response from the Biden administration. We already saw his response to Houthi attacks in the Red Sea. Basically, he called the Houthis up, let them know what he was going to do, and then he blew up some empty buildings. Not much of an effect. The Houthis are still active. They're still committing acts of terror, still harassing ships in the Red Sea, and we're still having to deal with it. The Biden administration has enriched and emboldened Iran. You'll remember that the Biden administration unfroze $6 billion in Iranian assets that were being withheld from them. With that money, they are sponsoring terrorism around the world, in Israel and all around the Middle East and elsewhere. Now, Biden probably won't do much about this, but what should we do? First of all, it's worth noting that we are still in Iraq after 20 years of being there. This seems to me to be completely unnecessary. I mean, we are not at war with Iraq. We're not at war with any country that borders Iraq. It seems like if you put U.S. troops in Iraq, you're simply putting them in harm's way for not much of any gain. It is costly to the American taxpayer, and it's risky to our soldiers. But since our troops have already been attacked, I believe that our response should be to figure out who did it and then bomb them into next week. Show them that if you mess with American servicemen, you will be destroyed. The Biden administration has had some harsh words for these regimes and these terrorist organizations that have been harassing U.S. and other military forces, but the Biden administration has yet to take decisive action against any of these groups. And that is what it's going to take to dissuade them from harassing American soldiers.